This video is to bring you a closer look at the McKinney number 4007RB. This is a horizontal double-acting pivot hinge with reversed brackets, according to McKinney. This item is discontinued with no remaining inventory. This video is simply meant to archive the data so that we can see in the future what it looked like, what it did, etc., etc. So this is what would be, this is a double-acting pivot. This is something that you're going to see very commonly, even though you may not notice it, in a courtroom is where you'll see them most typically. It's a steel surface spring pivot. You'll notice those installed in courtroom doors, the half doors that they have, a pair of them, or a single is where you'll see them. You'll see them in other applications where high-end woodwork is done. There are lots of different types of hardware, all variations on the same concept. Spring-assisted, always double-acting, self-centering. There are some that are hold open. So there are variations on it. But this sort of model, the 4007, is going to be a very typical model used in high frequency applications and high-end woodwork. You're not going to install, what I'm trying to say is, you're likely not going to install a pair of $20 gravity pivots, saloon or cafe style doors in that courtroom setting. You'll use something more robust, more appropriate, and something available in an architectural finish like this. Let's take some basic dimensional properties, and then we'll talk a little bit more about where it's used and about the installation of the item. From the boss all the way to the bottom of the screw, it looks like it's about 4 3/8 overall height. Its overall width, just for some context, looks like it's about 5 inch. Okay. The diameter of the body itself looks like it's somewhere in the range of about 2.5 inch. The only other component really involved with this primary component would be the top pivot. That gets mounted to the jamb. Overall height, about 2 1/4. Overall projection, about 2 1/2. Overall width, about 1 1/4 inches. You'll get the component that is attached to the top of the door. It's going to look like that up at the top, and that door will go back and forth. And then lastly, you will have a tension rod and a package of fasteners. The tension rod is for setting tension on this. This is an adjustable tension style device. It is extremely crucial that the installation instructions are followed to the letter. Failure to do so is going to render this, failure to do so ends up in a phone call or an email to me saying the hardware is defective. And when we go back and figure out how they went about installing it, it turned out that the instructions weren't followed. It needs to be reset, the spring tension, which is it's a chore. I've got a video of it being done, so it's not something you can't do, but it's a chore. I've even, back in the old days, you know, the client just had me ship it back to Bommer so that they could reset the tension and then send it back at their expense. So we'll get into the installation instructions. Let's talk more about where exactly you're going to use this item. If you are enjoying this video, please click thumbs up or like, and also please consider subscribing to our channel. Let's move on to the rest of the video. Now, the steel surface pivot, as I said earlier, is going to be used in those double-acting applications where you require something that's going to be very robust in terms of it handling countless cycles, where you're going to need something that fits the overall design, the width, the height, and the weight of the door, along with the thickness. And you're going to want to do so in something that can be done in an architectural finish like this satin chrome. This is a steel body, okay? So it's properly called 652. It's satin chrome plated over steel with a lacquer applied. These brackets are likely brass, however. No, apparently they're not. It's all steel, is the bottom line. So this is what would be called an adjustable spring tension. We're going to look at the installation instructions about how to go about doing that in terms of the exact steps of installing it. And again, courtroom doors is where you'll see this. or high-end retail where you'll have some sort of a door. And we'll talk about the limitations of width, height, thickness, and weight of the door for this material. Let's switch to the screen view and look at all of the supporting information. Before we do so, these are the instructions that are included in the package. McKinney 4007 and 4007RB. There's the model where the body is inverted, where you would mortise it to the bottom of the door, rather than generally what would be a cutout in the bottom of the door, or this would just sit on the bottom of the door itself, sometimes a cutout. But when you're seeing this video, at the time of me making this video, this is not uploaded to the item profile, but by the time you're seeing this video, it will be uploaded. But these installation instructions I do have online that will allow us to go over these steps, just so that we can basically archive the information. Let's switch to the screen view now. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. Here is the item that we are looking at. Let's take a look at some images that we have. There's the label. The contents of the box. The double-acting spring. The top bracket, the frame portion, the door portion, the tension rod, and the screw package. Do not release tension on this hinge completely. Mount hinge on door with tension pin in place. We'll get to that. That's what the bottom of the door sees. The jam bracket. Now, here's our item. Double-acting pivot hinge, satin chrome, exterior tension adjustment. It's adjustable spring tension. For heavy or light gates, for reverse brackets only. I don't really know if that reverse is a reference to the 4007RB or the 4007MRB. The other model that McKinney had, will show that to you. The gate spring pivot hinge has an exterior tension adjustment which can be adjusted after the hinge is applied. The anti-friction bearing carries the weight of the gate, and an anti-friction bearing in the top socket reduces friction and wear. And what they're referring to is this bushing right inside of here. I've had clients who have bought those bushings from us separately in the past, just because of the substantial amount of wear and tear that they have on their openings. That bushing wears out. The spring is large enough for heavy-duty conditions, but the adjustable tension makes it equally suited for light gates. The 4007RB series attachments are applied to the surface of the frame, and the box is applied to the bottom surface of the gate. However, in the MRB, the box is mortised into the bottom of the gate. That's a different series, a different model. We'll look at that again. When you buy one, we would have shipped you one. Let's look at the catalog page that's here. This is the different items that they have. So, in the double-acting or center-hung pivot, horizontal spring pivot, these gate spring pivots. This material, the 8000 and the H8000, these are gravity-style double-acting. These, as far as I know, are still made, but I'm highly suspect that they'll be available for much longer at this point. The source of this material has discontinued operations. So, we have the 4007RB and the MRB, and you can see what's happening. The MRB, this is going to be mortised. That's where the word M comes from. You're going to mortise this. You'll notch the bottom of the door around here. You would not install the door here. You're going to literally notch it from here down. But up here is where the door can come straight across, or maybe, well, probably straight across and surface mount it, and then notch it down in this direction. The top pivot, that's all going to be the same, regardless of which model it was. There's a template. This is not the installation instructions, but gives you all the dimensional properties of the item. It also tells us that we are dealing with doors that were 1 1/8 to 2.5 inch thick. 1 5/16 radius door edge. There's an asterisk there. Whenever you see an asterisk on a template, you'll certainly want to determine what that asterisk means. Okay, round pivot edge of door, 1 5/16 radius from pivot center line to clear pivot bracket. So what they're saying is you need to have that radius. If you're going to install this per these dimensions, you're going to need to have that radius on the edge of the door. Otherwise, the outside corner of the door will hit the bracket. So they're saying that you're going to have 3/8 of an inch from the cased opening frame, or the jamb, to the edge of the door, which is really the high edge of the door here. Three-eighths, 1/4 inch thick, 1/8 of an inch. That's where the 1/8 of an inch is. So 3/8 from here to here. So you'll need to put that radius on there. Otherwise, you'll have to completely adjust how you're installing the item. That is our template. There's also catalog here. Yeah, this is a full product catalog apparently. Yeah, this is the entire McKinney catalog that you can review. So let's look at those instructions that I had mentioned. Caution, do not remove tension pin for adjustment for adjustable type pivots prior to the installation. What happens if you remove the tension, basically the center point of the stored tension on the spring is then lost. There is a link below this video on how to reactivate that, which we'll look at, but that is wholly a different video altogether. Yeah, we'll be able to look at that. And again, when someone says it's brand new and it doesn't work, they have not followed the steps. Step 1, installation of the top bracket. Locate the jamb bracket at correct height and secure to jamb. Obviously, you're going to want to center this in the cased opening frame, most likely. Door preparation, radius the edge of the door. Mortise top socket into the top edge of the door, and they're talking about this infinity sort of looking device. You'll mortise that in. You're obviously going to need to refer back to the template, as that will give you the dimensions of everything. It's not on the instructions. Yeah, it's all here. 7/8 diameter. So you could easily use a 7/8 Forstner bit for that and drill 3 holes that are just basically heavy on 1/8 of an inch deep. For mortise type pivot cut out bottom corner of the door, that would be for the MRB style. Drill hole in the bottom of the door for the boss. Secure pivot to door with center of spindle aligned with center of hole and top pivot socket. What they're saying is this dashed line, that's the vertical axis of pivoting. Everything must be absolutely in perfect plumb alignment vertically. It has to be plumb. Step 3, installation of bottom bracket. Attach bottom bracket to pivot on door. So you've got the top bracket installed to the jamb. You've mortised the top of the door for the socket, and you've attached it. You're going to mortise, or you're going to prepare the bottom of the door for the spring pivot hinge. Attach jamb bracket to pivot on the door. So what you're going to do is this is attached to the door. You're going to apply this to the spindle. Attach nut on hand tight. Do not tighten with wrench. So the bracket goes on. You're going to take the nut that's here, and you're going to just hand tighten it. There are splines here that you need to be mindful of. So make sure that the bracket is completely parallel with the center line of the unit completely, because that's going to allow you to find a positive center, or an accurate center. Locate and mark correct position on jamb bracket for bottom jamb bracket by placing door and opening with top pivot pin in the top pivot socket and top surface of door held tightly against the top of the jamb. So this is attached to the spindle. The nut is hand tight. You're going to bring the entire door, which this socket is attached, you're going to put it over the top pivot pin and push it all the way up, is what you're going to do. You're going to mark the jamb for these holes. Remove the door, remove the bottom jam bracket from the pivot. Attach bottom jam bracket to the jam. So this is now going to get attached to the jam. Remove top pivot pin from top jam bracket. So right now you're thinking, I've removed this, I've attached it to the jam. Now how am I going to get the door in place? Well, the way you're going to do that is remove top pivot pin from the top jam bracket. This is held in with it's screwed in. Place the spindle and opening, inserting the spindle into the bottom bracket so that this is the spring pivot hinge is attached to the door. It all sits down into the hole that's here. Then you will be able to, once the door is in place, drop that top pivot pin back down and tighten it. With the door in the closed position, place washer and nut on the spindle and tighten securely. So make sure the door is in the 0 degree position, and then bring the washer, then bring the nut and tighten that down. When you're tightening down, it will draw those splines into the metal of the bottom jam bracket. That's what is going to allow it to stay in place. Failure to tighten the nut securely will allow the spindle to turn in the bracket, resulting in failure of pivot to close the door correctly. Now you can set your tension, or adjust your tension. To change closing power, insert the tension rod into the tension collar, turn counterclockwise as viewed from bottom, and remove the tension pin. Do not remove tension rod, leave in place. Reinsert tension pin in tension collar at the hole desired. So when you're facing this from the bottom, you're going to turn it counterclockwise. You can pull that pin out and make your adjustments to the rotational position of the tension collar and reinsert the tension pin, which is referred to here. And you're done. That's all there is to this. Some people immediately remove, thinking that they're not following the installation instructions, remove the tension on the collar and the spring that's inside of here, and they get everything installed and it doesn't work. It doesn't close, it opens in one direction, it doesn't hardly close. And we can take a closer look at actually what's inside of there, because we have the patent that's here, which is fun. Not a lot to see here, and if you've never looked at a patent, a lot of it might be gobbledygook. But nonetheless, this is the exploded parts drawing from that was sent to the patent office 15 plus years ago. Really neat for that to be here. And that does certainly represent the different steps of installing this item. Now the reactivation, there's a link below this video as well. Pardon me, this item, this document. These are the steps that you'll go through if you do need to reactivate that tension. And you'll have to follow these steps, and that's all that there is to that. You might want to read it a couple of times. I know for me it wasn't simple and straightforward the first time that I reviewed it. I do want to make note, because we're still on the screen view, of the name of the person who filed the patent. His name is Jackson. His name is also on the bottom of the installation instructions that you get. His name is indeed Stuart Jackson, a gentleman that I've met. He's forgotten more about spring hinges than people have ever learned. But what you'll notice is that it's the assignee is Bommer Industries. And that is the 7111358 patent number. That is on the bottom of the hardware underneath here, which I'll show you at the end. So this piece of hardware is actually a Bommer 7112, and I imagine that Bommer licensed the product to McKinney, and the instructions that I've just used are identical to the McKinney, except that McKinney's information is here. So this is a Bommer product, and always has been. Let's wrap up this video on camera. If you've not hit subscribe yet, we would very much appreciate if you did, and hopefully you're enjoying this video. Now, let's get back to it. 7111358. That's your patent. Okay. these are no longer available from McKinney, and it is November of 2022. We may have, my firm may have bought the last 10 that they had in stock. And that's because Bommer ceased operations. And as of this date, have not been bought out by anyone. So where people had trouble with these was removing that tension. A funny story that I would like to share with you about this exact product. I went to Bommer in 2019 to do a factory tour. Actually to speak to them about an idea that I had about how we could improve the volume of business that we did. And that story about that product is, I went to, as I had said, I went to Bommer in 2019, met with Charlie Martin, who is the husband of a granddaughter, of a granddaughter of one of the two brothers Bommer, the two gentlemen that started the company in 1876. So here we are, 140 some years later, I'm meeting the person who runs Bommer. So, you know, the age of a grandchild of someone who was alive in 1876 and probably relatively young. So the point of saying that is, you know, he was probably old enough to get Social Security. And I met with Charlie Martin, and he told me a great story. So if you are in the hardware industry as a manufacturer, sooner or later, or often, every time a year, you're dragged into some sort of a lawsuit. Your product is claimed to have caused this. Well, Bommer was dragged into a lawsuit, and the lawsuit was about a 7000 series pivot. And somehow, I don't know why it was involved, but probably someone got hurt. Maybe their fingers got crunched, in who knows what it was. But Mr. Martin is in the courtroom, he is on the stand, and he is being examined by the prosecutor. And are you prepared to admit that you make an inferior quality product? This and this and this. And Mr. Martin is just sitting there enjoying the show. And after the attorney finishes, he says to him, "Sir, before I answer that question, may I ask you a question?" He says, "Yes. Would you consider the construction of this courtroom of high quality?" He says, "Yes, of course. This is a house of law," some answer like that. "And would you agree to the possibility that all the material used inside of this very high quality space would also be of similar high quality?" He says, "Absolutely. I'm sure the court uses the highest caliber of goods." And that's when Mr. Martin pointed to the door that everyone walked through. I think he actually asked him, "Did you walk through that door to get to the courtroom?" And he said, "Yes." He pointed out to the fact that there was a 7000 series pivot on that door. I guess the term nowadays is mic drop. So that's where that all ended. Great story to relate. I hope that he's able to tell that story to many, many people in the coming years, and has over the decades. So if you have any questions on the McKinney 4007, feel free to reach out to us. I fear that they will never be available again, but if you have one and you need some tech support, feel free to reach out to us. That's really probably where this video is going to be of some value. How do I reactivate the tension on this? Someone took it off to paint and remove the tension pin. We can help you with that sort of thing. Any questions on the McKinney 4007 or any product in the McKinney line, please feel free to reach out to us. And thank you. Thank you for watching, and if you've enjoyed this video, please click thumbs up. Please subscribe and maybe even send the video to someone that you know. Thank you.